We all think we know the story of the Titanic, right? But what you might not know is how a whole series of small, almost unbelievable events came together to create a disaster everyone thought was completely impossible. Today, we're going to break down one of the most famous tragedies in history. So our story doesn't actually start in the middle of the icy Atlantic. It starts in New York City. Just try to picture this. 40,000 people just standing there in the pouring rain, all waiting for a ship called the Carpathia. They weren't just waiting for a ship. They were waiting for answers, for their loved ones, waiting for the survivors of a vessel that was supposed to be indestructible.
To really understand how this all went so wrong, we have to go back, way back to the beginning. You see, the Titanic wasn't just another ship. It was a symbol. It was a dream made of steel, representing an entire era's blind faith in its own technology and progress.
First off, let's just talk about the sheer scale of this thing. The Titanic was 269 meters long. That's like 3 football fields, end to end. At the time, it was the largest moving object ever created by human hands. Its size alone was a massive statement of ambition.
And on the inside, it was literally a floating palace. We're talking these huge sweeping grand staircases, a heated swimming pool, which was unheard of, a full gym, 4 different restaurants, even Turkish baths. This was designed to be the absolute peak of luxury travel.
Now, this is the technology that created that whole unsinkable legend. The bottom of the ship, the hull, was divided into 16 separate watertight compartments. The engineering was so clever that the ship could stay afloat even if 4 of these compartments were totally flooded. It seemed like the perfect safety system. Absolutely foolproof.
And let me be clear, this wasn't just some catchy marketing phrase. The engineers, the shipbuilders, the newspapers, the public, they truly, genuinely believed it was unsinkable. And this absolute certainty, this powerful belief in its own invincibility, well, that's the central, heartbreaking irony of this entire story.
So, the big question, how did the unthinkable actually happen? Well, it wasn't one single catastrophic failure. It was more like a cascade, a chain reaction of small, seemingly unrelated human errors that all lined up perfectly to create a disaster.
And here is the very first domino to fall. Right before the ship sails, a senior officer named David Blair gets reassigned. In the rush to leave, he accidentally takes a small key with him, a key to the crow's nest locker. And what was in that locker? The binoculars for the lookouts. Just like that, a tiny, simple mistake meant the ship's eyes were effectively blind. Okay, now let's jump forward to the night of the disaster. As the Titanic steamed full speed across the Atlantic, the danger ahead wasn't a mystery. They had been warned, not once, but over and over again, that they were sailing directly into a massive ice field.
Just think about that number for a second. Not 1 or 2, 7. 7 different iceberg warnings were radioed to the Titanic on its final day. Messages were pouring in from other ships nearby, all saying the same thing. We're seeing huge ice fields right in your path.
So why on earth didn't they slow down? It seems to come down to commercial pressure. The chairman of the entire shipping line was on board, and he reportedly wanted to make a splash in the newspapers with a record-breaking Atlantic crossing. Speed was prioritized over the constant urgent warnings for caution.
This timeline really lays it all out, and it's stark. You can just see the warnings piling up all day. The last, most direct ones, one from a ship called the Mesaba and another from the Californian, which was literally stopped in the ice just a few miles away, those were either ignored or maybe never even reached the bridge. At 11:40 p.m., the unsinkable ship finally met its fate.
The second that iceberg scraped the hull, the myth of the Titanic's invincibility just shattered into a million pieces. What followed was a slow, cold 2-hour countdown to the inevitable.
And here's the fatal math. The iceberg didn't tear a single giant gash in the side of the ship like you see in the movies. Instead, it buckled the hull plates all along the side, flooding 6 of those watertight compartments. Remember, the ship was designed to survive 4. With 6 breached, sinking wasn't a possibility, it was a mathematical certainty.
And this might be the most shocking failure of them all. Believe it or not, the Titanic was actually compliant with the safety laws of the time. But those laws were dangerously out of date. The reality was, there were only enough lifeboats for about half of the 2,200 people on board. For over 1,000 people, there was simply no way out. And to compound this whole tragedy, help was incredibly close.
The SS Californian, the same ship that had sent that final warning about the ice, was stopped only 37 kilometers away, but they had shut down their wireless radio for the night. Their crew actually saw the Titanic's distress flares going up, but they misinterpreted them and never responded.
For decades after the disaster, questions remained. How could such a modern, strong ship have been so vulnerable? The final piece of the puzzle wouldn't be found until 1985, when the wreck of the Titanic was finally discovered nearly 4 kilometers down at the bottom of the Atlantic.
This was the question that haunted investigators for generations. Even with the iceberg strike, the damage just seemed too fast, too catastrophic. The wreck held the last secret.
And there it was, the final hidden flaw. When investigators examined the hull plates brought up from the wreck, they found a critical weakness. In the sections of the ship that hit the iceberg, the builders had used lower-quality iron rivets instead of the much stronger steel ones, most likely to cut costs. So on impact with the iceberg, those weaker iron rivets just popped. They snapped under the pressure. The steel plates they were supposed to hold together just separated like a zipper, letting water pour into not 1 or 2, but 6 compartments. The ship's greatest strength was defeated by its smallest, weakest parts.
In the end, the story of the Titanic is a story of human error, of overconfidence, and how a chain of small mistakes can bring down even the most unsinkable systems. And it leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. What are the Titanics of our modern world? What systems do we trust so completely that we believe they are simply too big, too advanced, or too safe to ever fail?